Good morning. Today is Thursday, January 4th, 2024. What would be your first question to God? God appears to you. God says something to you. And now it's your turn. What's the first question that you can ask? Well, that's what happens in this week's Torah portion. God appears to Moshe. God introduces himself. God says, "Hi, Moshe, I'm God." And obviously, I cannot even imagine how overwhelming that is, how speechless that would normally leave a person. And then God says to Moshe, "V'ata l'cha v'eshlachacha el paro v'otzeisa es ami b'nei Yisrael miMitzrayim." I want you to go to Paro and to take my people, the Jewish people, out of Egypt. Now, there is nothing in the little we know about Moshe's past to have prepared him for such a mission. We don't know of any qualifications that Moshe had for this. This comes, so to speak, out of the blue. And that would also be overwhelming. I mean, what do you say, number one, when God speaks to you? And number two, when God gives you a mission that it's overwhelming. And if you could bring yourself to speak at that moment, there's so much to say. There's so many questions to ask. There's so much information that you need. So, what does Moshe say after hearing God give him perhaps the greatest mission ever given to a human being, certainly up until that time? So here's Moshe's question. Vayomer Moshe el Elokim. Moshe says to God, Mi anochi, who am I? Mi anochi ki elech el Paro, who am I to go to Paro? And Rabbi David Wolpe points out, Moshe does not ask, wow, this is my first chance to talk to God. I want to understand the secrets of the world. I want to know the future. I want to know the meaning of life. I want to understand reward and punishment. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that would be on my list to, if I could get the words out, to be able to ask God if I was given the chance. But he does not ask about any of those things. Rather, he asks a question about himself. Mi anochi, who am I? Who am I to be able to do this? Moshe's first response, and I mean, to have the presence of mind to think that this is what I want my first question to be, is astounding by itself. Moshe's first response is to ask to learn something about himself. I want to understand something about myself. And God answers. Vayomer, God says to him, Ki ehyeh imach, I will be with you. So, clearly, that means to respond to Moshe's bewilderment about how he's going to be able to accomplish this task. God says, don't worry, I'm going to be with you. You're not in it alone. I'm going to be there together with you. I'm going to help you along the way. I'm not sending you out on your own. But there's a much deeper understanding that Rabbi Wolpe points us to. And this is something that is much wider, and it applies to every single one of us. Moshe asks, Mi Anochi, who am I? I need to learn something about myself, about what it means to be a human being, a person. And God answers, Vayomer, God says, Ki eya imach. You know what it means to be a human being? It means you are one that I am with. I'm with you. That's what it means to be you. That's what it means to be a human being. I'm with you. God says, who are you? You want to know who you are? You are someone who can walk with God and need never be alone. That's what God is saying to Moshe. You are someone that has an innate worthiness. Now, I'm absolutely certain that Moshe had all kinds of qualifications and righteousness and levels of spirituality that I'll never be able to understand, but certainly none of that had been demonstrated, at least within the text of the Torah. He's a shepherd. He's a shepherd. And God says, you know who you are? You are someone that I can walk with. God wishes to ensure that Moshe understands the majesty of being human. The gap between God and man is immense, and at the same time, God accompanies us. God is with us. That's what it means to be human. And once you understand that, once you truly understand that, then the work of redemption has begun. We've discussed this question before, and I've given a number of different answers. If there are 5 books in the Torah, each book has a theme. And a theme means that the beginning and the middle and the end relate to that theme and somehow by the end resolve what was posed at the beginning. Now, if the theme of the book of Shemot is Exodus leaving Egypt, well, they leave Egypt very early in the book of Shemot. By the Parsha B'Shalach, they've left Egypt. So if it's Exodus, if it's exiting Egypt, that's already accomplished. Why is the rest of the book there? Maybe leaving Egypt means to leave Egypt in order to reach Sinai. Well, that's reached by the middle of the book. What's the whole second half about? It's about building the Mishkan, building the sanctuary. How is that part of Shemos, Exodus, and not part of Vayikra, Leviticus, which has to do with the laws of serving in the Mishkan? Why shouldn't the second half of Shemos be part of Vayikra? Because the work of redemption, ultimately, the ultimate meaning of redemption is the manifestation of God accompanying us through life. And remember, we've discussed this before and we're going to come back to it. When the Torah finally does, in a few weeks, does get to the subject of building the Mishkan, God says, V'asu li Mishkan, build for me a sanctuary, v'shalchanti b'socham, and I will dwell within you. Within you, not within the building, within you, v'shalchanti b'socham, within you. In other words, what the book of Exodus is about is the realization that a human being is capable of being deserving, that God should want to accompany us, and that God, through our actions, we can cause that God will dwell within us. That's the story of Shemos. The story of Shemos is the story of redemption, and it is only resolved, it begins to be resolved with the prologue, where God says, Ki ehyeh imach, and then it comes into actuality for the entire Jewish people. V'shalchanti b'socham, I dwell among you, amidst you. In other words, the book of Exodus has as its theme, what is the nature of man? And that's why it begins with God saying to Moshe, Ve'ehyeh imach, and it ends with this concrete manifestation. To be able through our actions to have God within us. Because remember, we don't just build a sanctuary. We build a sanctuary and a home, and in order for God to dwell within us, and that means within every single one of us. That is what we are capable of. That is the opposite of slavery. The book of Exodus is the book of liberation, not just liberation from the persecution and servitude and the work that the Egyptians imposed on us when we were their slaves, but it is the book of liberation from feeling inferior, from being made to feel inhuman in the way others treated us. So we go from that to V'shalchanti b'socham. God wants us, God chooses to be within us in response to our actions. This is the question that every one of us asks. Mi anochi? What is the nature of my life, of my existence? What do I mean? What do I mean to the world? What do I mean to God? And this is the answer that God gives every single one of us. Ki ehyeh imach. You are one who is worthy that I should want to be with you, within you. And your actions, God says, bring me to dwell within you. That is who you and I are. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.